My friends, today we go back to a better time. A time when Friends, Frasier, and Seinfeld dominated our TV screens. A time when an awesome Friday night meant Surge Cola, some 3D Doritos, and an all-night Nintendo 64 session with your buddies. A time when the Expos still existed. A time when video rental stores ruled, and a time when nobody thought twice about giving Mel Gibson a job. Yes, we're going to the 90s. Yes, indeed, my friends, we are going to the 90s, and we're talking one-hit wonders of the 90s. Every decade has their own stars who rose to the top only to fade away and never be heard from again. We've got several that came around in the 90s, and I'm going to rank them. Here's my top 5 90s one-hit wonders. First things first, honorable mention to David Lee Murphy, who normally would have been on this list until 2018. See, David Lee Murphy had a huge hit in the 90s with Dust on the Bottle, but in 2018, he got his second #1 hit, teaming up with Kenny Chesney for Everything's Gonna Be Alright, giving hope to everybody on this list that maybe that next big hit is right around the corner. Honorable mention to David Lee Murphy. Let's get it started. At number 5 from 1994, The Tractors and Baby Likes to Rock It, their debut single off of their debut album. Talk about coming out of the gate hot. This song made it to number 11 on the charts, but it would be their only foray into the top 40 on the country music charts. Unfortunately, nothing else from The Tractors seemed to catch on like Baby Likes to Rock It. It really captivated the crowd in 1994, and it really pushed sales of their album. They set a record. That album was the fastest selling debut album by a country group to go platinum, so they had a lot of success with it, especially with that song Baby Likes to Rock It, but nothing else in the top 40. The Tractors, they're at number 5. At number 4, we've got Tai England, Should Have Asked Her Faster from 1995. Tai had been a member of Garth Brooks' band, but by 95 decided, I'm going to go solo. And just like the Tractors, he came out of the gate hot. Should Have Asked Her Faster was his debut single. He took it all the way up to number 3 on the charts that year, but nothing else could equal that song's success. As a matter of fact, he never made it back into the top 20 with any of his releases, so Should Have Asked Her Faster becomes the one hit in the career of Tai England. He's at number 4. At number 3, it is Ricochet and Daddy's Money from 1996. This band came out of Oklahoma, and they jumped on the scene. Their debut album, which was self-titled, just called Ricochet, was an absolute smash hit. This song was a big part of it. Daddy's Money was all over the radio, continues to be a very popular song choice. Today, it would be their only #1 hit, as subsequent albums could not match that success, and over the course of time, they started to lose a few members. One of their guitar players developed carpal tunnel syndrome. He had to leave. A couple more left due to family issues, and by the end, Ricochet was not what it once was, and they never got back to that level of success. But their one #1 hit from 1996, Daddy's Money, remains a favorite. That's going to be number 3. At number 2, Wade Hayes, Old Enough to Know Better from 1995. He was just 26 years old. It was his debut single, and it captured the audience's attention back in 95. It was a smash hit. He had a couple of more that made it into the top 10. One that made it to number 2, but he would never again reach #1 status like Old Enough to Know Better, but Still Too Young to Care. And by the end of the 90s, he had faded from the country music charts. He tried another comeback song in 2012. That didn't even make it into the top 100. So Wade Hayes stuck in 1995 forever with his #1 hit, Old Enough to Know Better. Still a favorite, but it's number 2 on the list of 90s one-hit wonders. At number 1, it is Mike Reid, Walk on Faith from 1991. Mike Reid holding the distinction of being the only person to have a #1 song on the country music charts and be a first-round draft selection in the National Football League. Yes, he was a college football phenom, the best interior lineman in the country when he played at Penn State, part of a couple of undefeated teams. He finished 5th in the Heisman Trophy voting. That got him picked 7th overall in the 1970 NFL Draft. He went to the Cincinnati Bengals, actually played a couple of years there, was a 2-time Pro Bowler before knee injuries ended his career in 1974. But when he had been at Penn State, what was his major? It was music. Yes, he finished his college years with a BA in music. That would lead him to being a pianist as well with the Utah Symphony Orchestra. He also played with orchestras in Dallas and Cincinnati, and when football was done, he had music to fall back on. In 1980, he moved to Nashville. He would become an in-demand songwriter. He wrote songs for Ronnie Milsap, for Larry Gatlin. He was starting to become known in Nashville circles, and by the late 80s decided, I'm going to do this myself. By that point, he had already written 12 songs that made it to number one on the country chart, so he knew what it took to get to number one. He wanted to see if he could do it himself, and he released Walk on Faith in 1991, and he did just that. He made it all the way to the top of the charts. Walk on Faith, a huge hit for Mike Reid that year. Unfortunately, it would be his only trip to the top of the country music charts. He released a few more singles. They all failed to crack the top 10, and by the mid-90s, he had turned his attention away from country music to composing songs for musical theater. Yes, he composed the music for a Civil War musical and then wrote more musicals in the decades to follow before retiring from music altogether. But he continues to be one of the biggest legends in two different fields because he is a college football Hall of Famer and a Nashville songwriter Hall of Famer. So Mike Reid, with his lone number one Walk on Faith from 1991, he is number one on my list of 90s one-hit wonders. Thank you for joining me today. Be back next week for another edition of Top 5 Tuesday.